on the agenda for the show today, we have to go through the timeline of this whole quote-unquote wiretapping scandal. And don't forget, Trump put it in quotes as well in his tweet. So we're going to go through that. We have to go through the hearing of Neil Gorsuch for the Supreme Court. There's a lot of stuff to talk about there as well. We have to go through that. There was a meeting at the White House today on Capitol Hill among Trump and congressmen and senators about how they have to vote for this new health care bill or they might lose their seats. So we have to go through that. And then, of course, we have things that, well, make Yaffee laughy. And there's a lot more to get to. Oh, and I forgot, we have to go through the latest with the Ayala thing. The state attorney who decided in Orlando she's not going to go after the death penalty at all. The Orlando Sentinel has an editorial that basically says what I said on my show last week. This tells me once again that these people listen to my show. This is Beyond Tom Benton. You're laughing in there because you know it's true. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're doing the show 8 to 10 p.m. tonight. By the way, I know some people have been asking me on Facebook when the show is. It changes. It just does. I can only take what's available. They give me what's available. If you want to start a petition here to get me on at a regular time, go for it. But other than that, you just kind of, what you want to do is send me a friend request on Facebook. I always post when I'm going to be on my Facebook page and on the Beyond Reason Facebook page. So just send me a friend request and I will accept it. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. Or if you listen to Good Morning Orlando, we always talk about it as well. And by the way, producing today is Tom Benson. Hey, Tom.
Well, usually in a circus you have a 3-ring circus, but today it sounds like we have a 4-ring circus.
Oh yeah, we've added a couple extra rings, maybe 5 or 6. 3 rings isn't good enough for Beyond Reason.
It's the big show until 10 tonight. Wow,
it's the Beyond Reason circus is what it is. Yeah. I like that. Okay, so the first thing I want to go through tonight is this whole scandal, which is apparently still going on over Trump's tweets a few weeks ago that the Obama administration and Obama wiretapped Trump Tower and wiretapped him. Well, this became the forefront in the news again because the FBI director, James Comey, talked with Congress yesterday, testified to Congress, and he said some things that I want to point out, and then I'm going to go through the timeline because Trump's getting a lot of flack this week because of what Comey said. And I think some of that flack is deserved, but I also think there's still something to this, which I want to get to. But this is what started it all. Director James Comey said this to Congress yesterday.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components.
So Comey comes out yesterday and says, we have no evidence of wiretapping. No evidence at all. I guess Trump is just making it up. Here's the thing with this, and I'm going to go through the timeline here. Trump, I'm sure he exaggerated when he tweeted, okay, which is why you don't just react and tweet when you're the president of the United States. You just don't do that, okay? This is why. You're the president now. You have access to actual intelligence. Use that access and find out what's really going on. But what happened, and I've said this before, is Trump was reading news reports and immediately reacted to them. And he did so because he was upset because he had a great speech, the State of the Union, and it got totally deflected by the whole Jeff Sessions thing that week. So Trump wanted to fight back, is what he always does. So he fought back, read these news reports, and then put the tweets out there. So what's the timeline here? Well, the news reports came out by Heat Street and other places that pointed out that they believe the Obama administration and the FBI requested FISA wiretap warrants on a server in a computer in Trump Tower. That is what the news reports said. Now, apparently yesterday, the NSA and the FBI are denying that. They said there were no FISA court requests. That is not true. That did not happen. So either Trump something's not right here is what I'm trying to get at. Because that means that either these news reports, because these were news reports, Trump did not just make this up out of thin air. These were actual reports from Heat Street, from others about wiretapping, and he was just tweeting about it. So either these news places were just making it up, or they're getting some false intelligence, which I'm going to get to in a second, because this is another problem with all these leaks. The real scandal is the leaks, as some people are pointing out, and one of the problem with all these leaks is there's a lot of disinformation out there. So let me go through the timeline. Heat Street, others came out with reports of the FISA cap, the FBI investigating Trump, which, by the way, go ahead and play cut 2 of Comey, Tom Benson, because Comey, even though he said there was no wiretaps, he did admit that they are investigating Trump's campaign and were investigating Trump's campaign. This is what he said.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts. As with any counterintelligence investigation, this will also include an assessment of whether any crimes were committed.
Okay, so let's go to the timeline again. News reports say there was FISA court warnings, and tapping into Trump's computer server on Trump Tower. Okay, Trump tweets out, reacts to what he saw because it was put together by different outlets, all the other things. There were also news reports that the Obama administration, this came from the New York Times, that the Obama administration tried to put as much intelligence about this out as possible to everyone in the intelligence community and other places because he wanted a lot of this stuff about Trump to leak because he was afraid when the Trump campaign, when Trump actually got in office, he was going to try to hide it. So you have reports of investigation. What's true? Well, the FBI did investigate. That is true. Like I said in the beginning, Trump probably exaggerated, but there is a grain of truth here. And the one thing that did come out of all this is proof that the FBI was investigating the Trump campaign. There's no proof yet that there was direct wiretapping of even Trump's server. They're denying it, but there is proof that he was investigating the Trump campaign. Second, we know for a fact that things are being leaked. National intelligence, national security intelligence stuff that should not be leaked are being leaked. And what's happening is either they're lying to a lot of these reports because these are news reports talking about talking about the wiretaps. So they say they have intelligence sources telling them that. So either they're lying to those news reports to spread disinformation, or those news outlets are lying or exaggerating, or Comey is lying and not wanting to reveal all the details of the investigation. There's so much going on here. So now Comey says, there's no FISA court warnings. The Democrats say, Trump's a liar. But don't forget as well what happened last week. And that's talk of other people coming out with different information on the wiretapping. But before I get to that, I want to get into the other part of this scandal, which are the fact that things are being leaked. The Michael Flynn, that was a wiretapped phone call. That was being leaked. That conversation was leaked and should not have been leaked. And Rand Paul was on ABC this week, and he talked about this. Go ahead and, Tom Menson, if you can, play that Rand Paul cut for me.
I think that we know one thing for sure, that the Obama administration did spy on Flynn. Now, whether it was direct or indirect, somebody was reading and taking a transcript of his phone calls, and then they released it. It is very, very important that whoever released that go to jail, because you cannot have members of the intelligence community listening to the most private and highly classified information and then releasing that to the New York Times. There can only be a certain handful of people who did that. I would bring them all in. They would have to take lie detector tests, and I would say, including the political people, because some political political people knew about this as well. But we need to get to the bottom of who is releasing these highly classified conversations. And if the president was surveilled, he probably wasn't the target. I don't know that he was or wasn't, but if he was, they probably targeted someone in a foreign government, but then they listened to the conversation with Americans. But our government's talking to foreigners all the time. We can't allow people in the Intelligence Committee to release the contents of that information to the media.
Okay. This is the main point I want to make about all of this. Politics and our division in this country is making it extremely difficult to get to the truth on this. We have one side, on the conservative side, who just totally go out, including Trump, and say Obama is wiretapping Trump. Obama did all this wiretapping, direct wiretapping Trump, and they go out and they push that narrative. The Democrats are busy pushing the narrative that Trump is just in bed with Russia. And they keep pushing that narrative. Well, there must be something. Trump's in bed with Russia and Trump's a liar. So you have this both sides just throwing out all of this stuff. And it's getting hard to get at the truth of what's actually going on. And it's extremely, extremely frustrating. Because I do think Trump exaggerated, but I do think there's a grain of truth here. Because I don't think those news reporters and those news reports just made it up. They are getting that intelligence from somewhere. Somebody or some group is leaking all this stuff, and now there is a chance that they're leaking false information, which makes things even worse. So here is what I think is actually the truth to all of this. One, the NSA, it does spy on when we talk to foreign countries. And unfortunately, they're supposed to mask or not spy when American citizens are involved. But as the Snowden thing, the prison program pointed out, that's not happening. And all these leaks, they are not masking American citizens. So American citizens are being caught up in all of this spying. Second, I don't think there is any evidence, and there has not been any evidence to prove that Trump has been in bed with Russia and there was collusion between Russia and Trump to mess with the election. But there is proof that Paul Manafort was involved with Russia. He had involvements with the Ukraine. He had involvements with Russia. And what's funny is he was eventually fired all of a sudden during the campaign, if you remember. That's probably why he was fired, because they found out this is not good. You're in bed with stuff we don't know. And if you've listened to Sean Spicer this week, he is trying to distance himself from Paul Manafort. He's trying to say, well, Manafort was just a volunteer and was barely involved, which isn't true. So they know something about him. So that's the second truth out there. The third truth out there is there are people in the intelligence community, for whatever reason, who are illegally leaking stuff to the press. And there's even evidence now that they're spreading false information. The fourth thing we know, the FBI, whether they used wiretaps or not, are investigating all of this. There is an investigation going on in the Trump campaign. So what should we learn from this? Get to the truth. Stop with the noise. Go through it. Now, I think the two connections between Trump and Russia are Paul Manafort. There's probably business connections. You can't run a worldwide business and not rub hands with people in Russia. I think that's almost impossible. But I also believe that Russia has been trying to put pressure on the U.S. to stay out of Ukraine, and there's a massive campaign from their ambassadors and other diplomats and other agencies in Russia to try and get us to back off of Ukraine. So that's why they've been talking to so many people. But there's so much noise out there that's going out there that's beyond reason. And Trump isn't helping himself, because all Trump has to do is say, I read news reports, I tweeted out reacting to the news reports. There was an investigation. If you don't like what I said, go after the news reports. He's actually done that before. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a good excuse, but at least that could help him put this behind him. The other thing they need to do is, if there is proven connection between Manafort and Russia, and the Trump campaign fired him for that reason, just point that out. Say, we found out Manafort had connections with Ukraine and Russia. Once we found out, we fired him. That's it. And then get it out there, get rid of it, because there's no evidence outside of that. The third thing that Trump needs to do is make sure he continues to be tough on Russia. Policy-wise, he still continued to be tough, but he said some things that make it seem like he's lenient on Russia. And the other thing I want to say is I think a lot of this spying between campaigns and the intelligence community and keeping track of everything that's going on, I think that's been happening for a long time on both sides, and we're just finding out about it. And I'm going to point out more evidence of that. Is any of this making any of sense to you? I'm trying to go through everything that's out there and get to the core of what's really going on here.
But it's like an iceberg. We know the tip, but we don't see, there's a lot underneath that we don't know anything about, and we don't know who to trust to give us that information.
And see, that's the issue there. You know, I don't have any connections with intelligence sources or anything. So, you know, all I can do is look from the outside as a reasonable observer. But you're right. We don't know who to trust. And not only that, but it's starting to sound like these news agencies don't know who to trust. Because now you have Judge Napolitano, who's been basically run out of Fox because he reported that sources told him something about this. I believe him. Sources probably did tell him. So are those sources lying? Is there something there? There's something going on here. And both sides are so busy with the political, hatchet jobs that nobody's trying to find the truth here. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
So if you listen to the first part of the show, there was a lot of stuff I had to go through to be a voice of reason through all that stuff that is beyond reason. By the way, I'm your voice of truth, your voice of reason, Michael Yaffee here. This is Beyond Reason Radio. And I went through the timeline. I went through what Comey said. All this wiretapping stuff has bothered me because people keep saying Trump's just lying. I don't think Trump really knew what he was saying. I think he was reacting to news reports. But it's hard for me to believe that there's just no wiretapping because you have many news outlets that said there were. Now, was it phone tapping? Were they tapping into Trump's phone and all that stuff? No, there's no proof of that. Was it directed directly by Obama? Even if there was, there's no way you can prove that. And they make sure you can't prove that. But HeatStreet.com, the BBC, and The Guardian all reported that there were FISA court requests to tap into a server in Trump Tower and to tap into electronic records between Russia and Trump. That's out there. So either whoever this source is that is spreading all this information to the news reports, he's either lying or Comey is lying or there's something else going on here. Okay, the other thing that has happened. Judge Napolitano on Fox, who has been suspended from Fox, but it looks like they're going to bring him back. He came out with another bombshell here that I had pointed out on this show. And this is another instance where intelligence sources told him something. So like I said, this is why these leaks are so dangerous. Because either they're leaking stuff that really shouldn't be out there, or they're spreading a lot of misinformation with all these leaks. This is what the judge said.
3 intelligence sources have informed Fox News that President Obama went outside the chain of command. He didn't use the NSA, he didn't use the CIA, he didn't use the FBI, and he didn't use the Department of Justice. He used GCHQ. What the heck is GCHQ? That's the initials for the British spying agency. They have 24/7 access to the NSA database. So by simply having 2 people go to them saying, President Obama needs transcripts of conversations involving candidate Trump, conversations involving President-elect Trump, he's able to get it. And there's no American fingerprints on this.
Okay, so a lot of people thought that was conspiracy theory. Well, the PRISM program and the Edward Snowden leaks revealed that this kind of intelligence sharing between the NSA and that British intelligence agency happens, that it happens. Fox News came out against, the rest of the Fox News, I think it was Shepard Smith or whatever, came out against what Judge Napolitano said, and Fox News suspended him for a while. You want to know why I think that happened? Because the British got really upset at this report, and the British probably talked to the Trump administration, and I bet you the Trump administration called Fox News and said, shut him up about that.
Or Murdoch is awfully tight with a lot of bigwigs in Britain. And the bigwigs in Britain who were upset got to Murdoch, and Murdoch is sitting on it.
I wouldn't, because it's just hard for me to believe. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. And it sounds conspiratorial, except a lot of this stuff was leaked by Edward Snowden. So all of that stuff would have seemed conspiratorial before it was leaked by Snowden. But I think you're right. There's something to that, because I don't think the judge just lied. I don't think he just lied and made up sources. So either the sources are lying to him, or there's something there, but the U.S. and the British don't want us to know about it.
You know what we need? We need a deep throat in a parking garage somewhere in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. I would be scared to death of that, though. I'm not going to lie. Being the guy who would meet them, I'd be scared. But there's something to all this. And then you have Dennis Kucinich, which this story did not get nearly the amount of attention I feel like it deserved. But he came out and he defended Trump. He hates Trump. And he was on Fox News, and this is what he said about the whole wiretapping thing.
There are people who are saying about President Trump's claim, it could never happen. Well, frankly, it happened to me. And I had proof, because the Washington Times actually let me listen into a tape that was made of a conversation in my congressional office. It was a conversation between myself and a foreign leader. The conversation was approved and cleared by House attorneys who said, yes, you can do that. That's your constitutional right. But someone had intercepted it. And I learned about it 2 years after I left office. Members of Congress ought to be aware that my experience was that my phone wasn't safe in a congressional office. Now, if they can do that to a member of Congress, they can certainly do it to a presidential candidate, and they can do it to private citizens as well.
So he comes out and he says, look, there's wiretapping going on. And you know how we know for a fact it's going on? Because it happened to Mike Flynn. So we know it's happening. The only proof we don't have that it happened directly to Trump. But everyone's so focused on Trump's tweets and his exaggerated tweets that they're missing that there's actually some real news here that we're wiretapping American citizens and members of Congress and other things, and we should be concerned about that.
Let me throw another piece of sausage into the mix here.
Yes.
Trump has not gotten as far as he's gotten by being dumb. He's the guy who does the deal. He's very cagey. He may be impulsive, but he's cagey, and he knows what. I think he has a better idea of what's going on than we realize.
Well, I think he might now. I don't think he did before he tweeted, but you'll notice that he's been very quiet about this recently. Like I said, there's something he found out, and maybe he thinks, maybe we need to keep these wiretapping. It's like with the NSA stuff. You know, a lot of people outside of Congress say they don't like it, but then once they get to use it, then they all of a sudden like it and don't want to get rid of it. But this whole thing, there's something going on. They have to get control of these leaks because what's happening is they're leaking stuff about American citizens and members of Congress. That's very, very dangerous, as Rand Paul said. And the second part is some of these people that are leaking. And by the way, the New York Times and other outlets reported that the Obama administration made it easier through the NSA, from the NSA intel, to get it out to as many intelligence people as possible so it could be leaked to damage Trump. That was reported. That's a factual report there. So what could be happening is a lot of disinformation is being thrown out there because you have all these intelligence sources eager just to leak stuff and they don't know the full story. This stuff is just crazy. It's crazy, and I feel like it's just not going to get any better because both sides are just going nuts over this. And with all of this stuff happening, there's actually real stuff that we need to address as a country that this stuff is really, really getting in the way of. For one, we have to address the leaks, yes. But healthcare is a giant issue this week. The Supreme Court is a giant issue this week. Trump's budget is a giant issue this week. Tax cuts and tax reform is a giant issue coming up. There's a lot of stuff that we should be talking about, but everyone is so focused on trying to either bash Trump or defend Trump that we're not getting to what really needs to be on. But this is why you have me. This is why you have the voice of reason, Michael Yaffee. By the way, you watch now. A lot of this stuff's going to come out. I say this stuff now, and then all of a sudden there's going to be on Fox News next week about how who's spreading disinformation in the intelligence community. Is there a lot of disinformation going on? You'll watch that. All of a sudden, they'll kind of pick up on that. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is another edition of Beyond Reason Radio, where I'm your voice of reason, your voice of truth in a world that is beyond reason. If you missed any of the show, make sure to check out the podcast at beyondreasonradio.com. You can go to 1025wfla.iheart.com, click on the Good Morning Orlando tab, and click on Beyond Reason blog. I post all the podcasts there as well. I went over so much in the first half hour about the whole wiretapping scandal. So if you missed any of it, you're going to want to listen to it and go through it. I tried to sift through a lot of stuff dealing with that, and there's a lot there, and it's hard to deal with all that, to get to the truth, because I heard a Ben Shapiro, a political commentator. I heard him this week talk about how we're in the political entertainment complex. The political entertainment complex. And what that means, and I really liked it, so I wanted to expand on that. What that means is we are so focused on entertainment, the aspect. So you have all these conservative outlets and liberal outlets, and they just want to get ratings. It happened with Rachel Maddow. I mean, all you have to do is look at what's happened this week. You have Rachel Maddow with the tax, last week with the tax return thing. Then you have Tomi Lahren, who's basically done a whole flip-flop and she's been all over the place, I guess, on issues. And you have to wonder, are we really after the truth here, or are we just trying to make noise, get attention, and get ratings? Well, it seems like when you have both sides who just want to get ratings and just want to entertain you and stir up things, that it's hard to get to the truth. So you have this political entertainment complex. I actually agree with that. Now, I'm on Facebook Live. So if you send me a friend request on Facebook, search Michael Yaffee. You can find me on there. I'm also on the WFLA Facebook page and the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page, so you can watch me on Facebook Live right now. And I got a comment on Facebook Live by someone who said, why don't they go straight to the writers who reported on the Trump wiretap? Bring them in and ask who their sources are. No one is suggesting that. That creates a very big problem. I understand where you're coming from, but politically that could be very damaging, and I don't think Trump would want to go down that road.
And the writers will protect their sources. They'll go to jail before they reveal their sources.
Oh, yeah, and plus, a lot of these outlets like the New York Times and stuff, they have a team of lawyers they're going to go not only will they protect their sources, but they're going to have article how Trump is infringing on the First Amendment and all this stuff. And not only that, but then they have to go to like a lot of conservative sources and do the same thing because there's conservatives who have these sources. So, you know, Trump he actually said in a speech not too long ago that, you know, there should be no unnamed sources. Everyone should reveal their sources. Well, that's kind of a bedrock of journalism to have unnamed sources, and there's a reason for that. So you can actually use them and actually use them as sources. Otherwise, you won't be able to get any information. So I feel like that would probably be a very dangerous road to go down, not only legally, because there could be some troubles legally, but politically, it would just be extremely, I mean, the headlines and the pictures of arresting journalists, I mean, the left would love it in a sense because they would say, look, Trump's like Putin arresting journalists and stuff. But it's just, to me anyway, it's just a very dangerous road. Now that somebody else commented and said, there's something about Comey I just don't trust. Director of the FBI, Comey. And then somebody else said his answers were very political yesterday, Comey's answers. And
something very frivolous hit me when I was watching him give his testimony.
Yes, go ahead.
Does he dye his hair? It looked dyed to me.
He probably does.
Yeah.
I think he does.
Okay.
He's also like 7 feet tall. Have you ever seen him?
Oh, yeah. Huge.
He's really tall. There were some other things that were frustrating about that hearing, too. One was the fact that he wouldn't answer a lot of questions. You know, hey, are you investigating this? Well, I can't comment on that. Well, what do you mean you can't comment on that? It seems very important to what you're saying. You're telling us there's an investigation, but we can't know anything about it?
And he would talk about what he wanted to talk about. What does that mean?
Exactly. So there's something. That's why I almost don't trust him on the FISA court thing. I don't know. There's something not to trust on all of this stuff. So all that stuff's out there. I went through it in the first half hour. Make sure to check out the podcast. Right now, I want to shift gears a little bit because the other big story of the day, and this is obviously what. You know, I just had someone comment and said, jobs, replace Obamacare, and build the wall. That's good. And they had the specs for what the wall is going to look like. It's very interesting. So the next thing that's out there is the Obamacare replacement. I'm calling it Trumpcare. Trump apparently talked to Republicans today and told them, and this is what Politico came out with, and basically told them that if you don't vote for this bill, the American Health Care Act, that you're going to suffer politically in the congressional races in the next couple of years, that you're going to suffer. Now, a lot of people took this as a threat by Trump. There was a report out a few weeks ago that Trump apparently is going to go after people, conservatives in the primaries who didn't vote for this. But I'm not sure I'm going that far yet. Because when you actually read what he actually said, he doesn't, I mean, maybe it's a veiled threat. I don't know. You would probably have to hear his tone maybe. But this is what he said. He said, this Thursday we have a chance to repeal and replace Obamacare. And this time you've actually got someone who will sign the bill. I'm asking for your vote. But then he said, and let me get the actual quote here. And I missed it. He said, I had the exact quote here. Basically, I know he basically said that if they don't vote for it, he thinks they're going to suffer politically.
Well,
here it is.
He's probably right.
He says, many of you came in on pledge to repeal and replace Obamacare. I honestly think many of you will lose your seats in 2018 if you don't get this done. I agree and disagree. The problem with this is he's right. If they don't get some kind of replacement done, it could be very damaging. But this replacement is a disaster, in my opinion, and it's extremely, extremely unpopular. So, and they're having a real hard time. And the reason why it's unpopular, and there's actually a poll out here that shows that the majority of America is very skeptical of this replacement. The survey found that 51% of, who had this survey? Harvard-Harris poll. It was out. It said 51% of registered voters view the GOP effort as moving the country backward, while 26% say it would be an improvement. Now, why is the poll of, people who like it so low? Well, because the Republicans are dumb. Because what they're trying to do, and they actually added some improvements this week, which just make the thing even worse, in my opinion. It's even worse now than it was to begin with. But what they're trying to do is go halfway, because they think they can get Democrats on board if they go halfway. This is a very stupid approach, because the Democrats are in a mindset right now that they will strongly oppose, unless Trump says, I'm going for socialized medicine tomorrow, they're going to strongly oppose whatever the Republicans and whatever Trump proposes.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
It doesn't really matter what's in it.
That's right.
They're going to oppose it. So why is this so low on the other side? Because there are a lot of conservatives like myself and a lot of Republicans who do not like this bill either. And this is the problem when you try to go halfway. If they were smart, what they would do is go full bore. Let's have an actual free market conservative plan. We know we're not going to get the Democrats. So fine, forget them. They forgot about us when Obamacare was passed. So forget them, and then try to get all of the Republicans. Try to get all of the conservatives, and then you could at least get enough support to get something passed. But right now, they're trying to do Obamacare light halfway. I mean, even Ann Coulter, who is, the biggest Trump supporter ever, loves Trump, wrote a book called In Trump We Trust. We're crying out loud. She doesn't like this bill. And she thinks if they pass this bill, there will be very bad consequences. So instead of trying to get more Democrats on board with you, why not try to get more Republicans and conservatives on board with you? This is why I get frustrated at the Republican Party. Now I'm going to take a break here. Senator Mike Lee, who's been very strongly against this, kind of like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul, had a comment on this. We're going to get to that in the next segment, and we have so much more to get to. Luckily, we're on until 10 p.m. tonight. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Of course, you might have the devil on one side. I don't know who the devil would be. Maybe Bernie Sanders or something. And then you have me, Michael. Maybe Rachel Maddow is the devil. I don't know. She's the devil on one side. I am the conscience, the angel on the other side, telling you what's right. Okay, a little tongue-in-cheek there. I hope you all realize that. I'm really not an arrogant person. I hope no one out there thinks I'm an arrogant person.
Have you been accused of being arrogant? I think you're anything but arrogant.
Really?
Oh, sure.
Well, I mean, you know me personally, though.
No, that's true.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what comes off on the air because I'm strong. I have my opinions, but, I'm always going after the truth. And by the way, if you ever disagree with me, you can always call the show. 407-916-5400. You can always call, or you can text to 23680. Of course, everyone who disagrees with me, they always tell me on Facebook. They always comment on my stories on Facebook if they disagree with me. They never actually call into the show, which is kind of annoying. Okay, so we were talking about healthcare and how I think the Republican strategy, Paul Ryan, Trump, is a stupid strategy right now. They're just so desperate to get this done that they're going to pass a very, very bad bill. A very bad bill. This is what Mike Lee, he was on CNN this week, and he's been strongly against this. And he's been in these talks with Trump and other things. And he's been nice to Trump. Talk about someone who doesn't come off as arrogant. Mike Lee does not come off as arrogant. But the senator from Utah, he really doesn't like this bill. And he spoke to CNN, and he talked about why he thinks Paul Ryan's wrong on this bill. And he makes some really good points. This is what he said.
I think he's wrong, especially if what he's suggesting is that we have conservative policies in this bill that will bring down the cost of health care. Look, one of the things that has caused the cost of health care to spike so significantly is the regulatory section of the Affordable Care Act, which has put insurance companies in a position where they've increased their premiums, and the cost of health care across the board has gone up. This bill does far too little about that. It does very little at all that would bring premiums down. And that's the concern I have with it, is what this would do to the cost of health care. We've got to bring that under control. This bill doesn't do that to a degree sufficient for me to vote for it.
So he basically said right there, right now, he's not going to vote for the bill. In fact, he tweeted out today, he said, I promised the people of Utah I would do everything I can to repeal Obamacare. The House bill does not do that. I'm a no. Hashtag fool repeal. And, you know, I just want to say I love you, Mike Lee. I think he must listen to this show because I've been saying what he's been saying for weeks and weeks about how the biggest problem with healthcare right now and why premiums are going up are the regulations, the mandates. There's so much of that, and this bill doesn't get rid of that. It doesn't get rid of, you know what so there was a lot of problems with this bill originally. So you know what they changed? They made it more leftist. So one of the complaints that Democrats had is that the tax credits on the bill gave more for young people than older people. So older people wouldn't be able to get as many tax credits as young people. Now, why do you think that is? The whole point of that was to encourage young people to buy the insurance so they would be in the system without a mandate to pay for the old people. Well, the Democrats went up in arms. So what did they do? They expanded tax credits for old people. It just makes it worse. And none of this is going to help. You know, I had someone comment on Facebook just now who said, what I can't understand is why we are discussing health insurance at all. Last time I checked, that was not a part of governmental responsibility. I 100% agree with you. The problem is government has been so heavily involved in healthcare for like 30 years now, since Medicare, really. And they've spent trillions of dollars and added new laws to the healthcare industry that has got us to this point. And instead of recognizing that and understanding that is what's causing the problem, Obamacare made it worse. So government got us into this mess. This is what always happens. And then Obama comes in and says we need more government. And then the Republicans say they're going to repeal it. And then the Republicans don't repeal it, and they have a plan that still has government heavily involved. Now, there was a story out, and when the free market can solve so many of these problems, there was a story out that came out last week that I saw that's getting a lot of attention now, is there's a doctor's office out there that what they are doing is they are charging, instead of it being through health insurance, this doctor's office charges a monthly fee. So instead of paying a health insurance company, you just pay the doctor directly or the office directly. And it's like a subscription. Now, subscriptions are very popular. It's popular in music, movies, television right now. So it's a very good idea. This was done by Dr. J. Brian Hill. I found this from Business Insider. I'm trying to see exactly where he is doing this. But he realized by getting rid of the insurance stuff and just charging a monthly fee, he could lower prices tremendously because it costs so much to deal with the insurance companies and all the paperwork and all that stuff.
What's the monthly charge? Do we know?
Let me see. I
would think for a family of four, it's got to be, a couple $100.
I think it changes. I'd have to look more into that because, here we go. The family had to pay $150 a month to belong to the practice. So one family had to pay $150 a month. But if more doctors did that or more offices did that, prices would go down because there'd be competition. That's how the free market works. But government's way too involved. Okay, one more hour to go. We have to get into the Supreme Court hearing of Gorsuch, Neil Gorsuch. A lot of interesting stuff there. Plus, Aramis Ayala. A lot to comment on that thing, because that thing has just gone ridiculous and beyond reason. And of course, this is Beyond Reason Radio, so I have to talk about it. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. One more hour to go, and I will be right back.
Well, I found some kind of conviction.
So there is a new Muslim ban that came out today that's not getting a lot of attention. At least if I were a leftist, I would say it's a Muslim ban because this is what they do, you know. I don't know if you heard about this, Tom Benson.
I have, and I think it's a cagey move on the Trump administration's part. It accomplishes a lot of what they're were set out to do with the other.
Oh, so you think?
Yes.
Oh, you think this is like I didn't even look at that. All I know is this is the headline: electronic devices to be banned in cabin on certain U.S.-bound flights. Now, they're banned from certain U.S.-bound flights from countries in the Middle East and Africa, mostly majority Muslim countries. So how long until the left comes out and says, this is a Muslim ban, it's racist?
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
So you think it was like, this is like Trump's way of getting around it?
Sure. Give it a
That is
try.
very fascinating.
Give it a try, see what happens.
I didn't really look at it that way. I was just looking at it like I could just so see the left coming out and saying, this is another Muslim ban. Those are Muslim laptops he's preventing from entering the country. How dare he? I mean, it's just and of course it's not in the law. There's nothing Muslim about it in this either, but, you know, his rhetoric in the campaign was anti-Muslim, so this is another Muslim ban. Oh, that's coming. You watch, it's coming. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. Other things we are going to address in the show, in the rest of the show. We addressed a lot in the first hour. I was on 8 to 9. I'm going to be on until 10 p.m. If you missed any of the first hour, check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available, especially on iHeartRadio. Just search Beyond Reason Radio. Catch out the podcast there. So the thing I addressed in the first hour was healthcare and the Comey hearing. This hour, I'm going to address Aramis Ayala, our lovely state attorney, and I'm going to address Gorsuch and the hearing there because there's some very interesting stuff, some very revealing, stuff I already knew, but very revealing stuff about Democrats that I have to make some points on. So I will do that. So if you have any comments on anything I say, because when I mentioned, right after, I was on the night after Aramis made that announcement that she was not going to go after the death penalty. I was on that night. And I got a lot of people on the text line. You can text it 23680 saying, I don't know. You don't know what you're talking about, Yaffee. I'm a legal scholar, and you're wrong. Okay. So you can call, if you disagree, 407-916-5400, or you can text to 23680. So I don't know what I'm talking about. So if I don't know what I'm talking about, because my point was this. What she did was overstepping her bounds for political reasons. She made a political decision to not go after the death penalty, even though the death penalty is a part of the law in Florida. And what Markeith Lloyd did, the cop killer here in Orlando, for anyone who's not from Orlando, anyone who's listening to the podcast that's not in Orlando, this is still a big story for the country when you think about it, especially because George Soros funded her campaign. But the cop killer, it was a capital offense by all intents and purposes of the law. It's pretty obvious it was a capital offense. But she decides to go out and say she's not going to pursue the death penalty in any cases. And I said, well, this is her not following the law. This is her not doing her job. This is her not doing what she was elected to do. Okay. I got some flack on that because immediately people said this. Have you ever heard of discretion? Discretion. She has discretion. She can decide whatever she wants to do that. And I made the point that discretion, and yes, I don't have a law degree, okay? So whatever. Take it for what it's worth. But these are not just my opinions. There are a bunch of legal scholars out there who agree with this. The discretion is usually based on individual cases. So they give the state attorney discretion so they can look at the individual case and determine whether that individual case, based on the evidence, requires the death penalty or not. That's why they give them discretion. That's not what she's doing here. What she's doing is she's making a bold policy decision, a decision usually left up to the Florida legislature and the governor, not to state attorneys. It's not the job of state attorneys to come out based on their political beliefs to make a bold policy change on how they're going to prosecute people. If you don't like the law, run for the legislature and try to get a different law passed where you don't go after the death penalty. But that's not what she did. That's what I said. Got a lot of flack for it. And yet I'm reading today, read this morning, and here it is, an editorial from the Orlando Sentinel. Now, this is not an op-ed. This is an editorial from the Orlando Sentinel board, editorial board. They basically are now, and they're very leftist site. They don't agree with a lot of stuff I say. They basically came out in this editorial and said exactly what I said. Almost word for word. I mean, not really, but here's the headline. Ayala flunks a fundamental. Apply law, don't rewrite it.
Amen.
Is that not what I said, by the way? But you're right. Amen. It's exactly what I think. It says State Attorney Aramis Ayala blindsided voters in her circuit and wrongly submitted her judgment for their elected representatives in Tallahassee when she declared Thursday that she wouldn't seek the death penalty against accused cop killer Markeith Lloyd or any other defendants during her time in office. They continue on here in the editorial. During her 5-month campaign for office last year, Ayala never directly disclosed to voters any intention to impose unilaterally a moratorium on capital punishment on cases in Orange and Osceola counties, the third largest circuit in Florida. It continues on. Political junkies might have seen it coming when billionaire George Soros, a death penalty opponent, spent more than $1 million last year to help elect her. But a spokeswoman for the state attorney told a Sentinel reporter earlier this week that Ayala would be seeking the death penalty in 6 pending cases. So for most voters, Thursday's declaration came as a bolt out of the blue. The Sentinel continues on here, and while the prosecutor insisted her decision was based on her own extensive research into the pros and cons of the death penalty, the arguments she cited against capital punishment, yada, 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 have been debated for years. Surely an experienced prosecutor like Ayala, who handled death penalty cases before, would have thought through these arguments before deciding to run for the circuit's top job. Assuming she did, voters had a right to know where she stood on such a fundamental issue. So they continue on here about Rick Scott and recusing her and suspending her because she wouldn't recuse herself. But this is what the Orlando Sentinel basically points out that I agree with. Basically what they are saying, which is exactly what I said, is that what she did is an abuse of power. This is what it says. State law gives prosecutors, including Ayala, the discretion not to pursue the death penalty in individual cases. Exactly what I said on the show last week. Got flack for it. Her decision to adopt a general policy against the death penalty as long as she is in office, her current term runs through 2020, is an abuse of that discretion. Let me read that again. This is the Orlando Sentinel editorial, not me, saying her decision to adopt a general policy against the death penalty as long as she is in office is an abuse of that discretion. Anyone who listened to her press conference, who understands who funded her, who understands what's going on, knows she did this based on political pressure and political reasons, and she is overstepping her authority, and she misled the voters. Anyone with common sense, you don't have to have a law degree to understand that's what's going on here. And so I agree with the Orlando Sentinel for once. But then it gets even crazier when it comes to Ayala. Yesterday, it was either yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday. They had a hearing on the Markeith Lloyd case where she wasn't really even supposed to be there, but she showed up. So she sat next to the actual acting attorney in that case. She just shows up and presents herself to the court. And then, as the Orlando Sentinel reported, when the hearing began, the judge asked attorneys to give their names and identify who they represent, which is a common practice in court, obviously. Ayala was the first to jump up and speak. This is not the venue for her to be doing this. This shows who she is, that she is a social justice political warrior, not necessarily good for a state attorney's office. And basically, the only reason she won is because George Soros, one, funded a lot of money in there, but who she was running against had a lot of personal problems that were out there, and people didn't want to vote for him. So she got lucky. And that's probably why George Soros funded her campaign, because they knew she would get lucky. But she stands up. When the hearing began, the judge asked attorneys to speak. She stands up and says, "I need to be clear. I think the governor overstepped his bounds." If I'm the judge in this case, I'm going to think, okay, why are you telling me this? This hearing has nothing to do with your thoughts on the governor. This hearing has to do with the Markeith Lloyd case. If you think the governor overstepped his bounds, make that case, and I think there's going to be another hearing later this month where they talk about whether the governor can do this or whatever. But you don't just show up for a hearing and start yelling at the judge about what you think the governor did wrong. It has nothing to do with what's happening in that hearing. And she did it because she was upset. If this is how she conducts herself, this is a very big problem, in my opinion. What do you guys think? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. I'm getting a bunch of comments on Facebook Live. You can watch me on Facebook Live. Just send me a friend request on Facebook. Search Michael Yaffee. Send me a friend request. Or follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We have Tom Benson producing, and we will be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
So I'm getting a bunch of comments on Facebook Live on terms of the Orlando Sentinel editorial saying that Aramis Ayala, the state attorney, overstepped her bounds and abused her power by saying she's not going to go after the death penalty. One person says, I got a lot of comments on this on Facebook Live. You can see me on Facebook Live. Just search Michael Yaffee, send me your friend request, or you can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page or the WFLA Facebook page. We're on News Radio 102.5 WFLA as well. You can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available after the show. One person says she needs to be marginalized by having all capital cases taken away from her. Another person says, talking to me, "Oh, so you're the one reading the Orlando Sentinel." So another person says, "That's amazing that the Sentinel actually got it correct." And then in terms of what she did at that hearing, one person said it's not relevant at all. Another person says leftist political hack used to judge legislating from the bench. Used to judges legislating from the bench. And another person says she's fighting to stay on the case. So we're actually getting some calls on this. This always gets a lot of reaction from people. So people are very fired up about this, especially in the Orlando area. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Sherry in Winter Springs. Sherry, what's your take on this?
Hey, Mike.
Hello.
I'm upset about what she's doing. I call her, like Bud did, call her Miss AAA.
AAA, yes. Arrogant Aramis Ayala. That was right.
Arrogant Aramis Ayala.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm against her, but on TV tonight, on just about every radio station, and I don't know if you were taking a nap and you missed it or not.
Uh-oh. I probably did.
The police officer that tried to arrest that black kid in that intersection a year and a half ago, and one of the kids in the car got out and ran, and this one kid behind the wheel, he was about 15, he drove over the police officer.
Wow.
Are you there, hon?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the guy has been in and out in the hospital for I don't know how long. He's got back problems. He walks with a cane. He's got a service dog. He's got kind of brain injury.
That's awful.
He can never get his job back. And Aramis' office is giving this kid a deal.
Ugh.
Okay.
What is her issue against cops? It almost seems like she has an issue against cops.
She's a racist and she's a cop hater, and people need to look into what she's about.
Yeah.
But when you've been the victim of a crime, and the DA's office is going to make a deal, aren't they supposed to get a hold of you and say, "Is this okay with you?"
Yeah.
Well, he's never been contacted. He finds out on the news.
I know. Well, that's what happened with the family of Deborah Clayton. They never contacted her apparently about the fact they're not going to go after the death penalty.
Well, she is a cop hater and she is a black racist. She doesn't like white people. And check it on the news later.
Oh yeah, I definitely will. I appreciate you sharing that with me, Sherry. I did not hear that. That's wow. And that definitely adds a wrench to this whole thing. Let's go to Michael in Orlando. Michael, what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, I just have one question. I'm not a politician and I'm not an attorney, but
neither am I. So
right, but I've been hearing so much about this lately, and what I'm wondering was when she's already been obviously relieved of her duties in regards to this case, and she shows up in a court of law and stands up and starts running her mouth like that when she's got no business being there. Apparently, that's what I'm hearing. Why isn't there any? Shouldn't she have been held in contempt of court?
To be honest, Michael, I had that same question. I really did, because I don't understand it.
I would be like, why? If I were the judge on the bench, I would ask her immediately, what are you doing here? Why are you running your mouth? You've already been relieved of the case. And
I know.
But that was it. That was my one question. I don't want to milk the cow, but I'm just saying because she's very arrogant.
Go ahead.
She has an agenda apparently.
Oh yes.
But to show up in court and be so arrogant, I don't mean to raise my voice, but to show up in court and act like that and be so arrogant, I just thought she should have been held in contempt of court.
Michael, you can raise your voice all you want. I'm raising my voice because I'm upset. I don't blame you for being upset.
Well, yes, sir. Okay,
Michael,
I enjoy your show very much. It's always good to listen to you and Bud Hedrick. I listened to you guys for years.
Oh, thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
I appreciate that, Mr. Yaffee. And I want to correct myself. For a long time, I thought it was YAPPI.
Yeah,
and I think you corrected us. You corrected us.
I still get a lot of people call me Yappy.
It's Yaffee. Now I got it. Now I'm straightened out.
Just think like Laffy Taffy.
Laffy. There you go.
Yaffee. I've been saying for years I need to make my own taffy brand called Yaffee Taffies.
Yaffee,
I feel like I could make.
Go.
I feel like I could make a lot of money doing that. I have no idea how to make taffy though, so I'd have to learn that.
You certainly could. There you go. There's a sideline for you if you ever needed it.
Thank you, Michael.
Like you even have the time. I don't know. I don't know when you ever sleep.
I don't. I sleep on the weekends, like all weekend.
Okay.
It's really bad.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's good talking to you, and you guys take care. Have a good night. And I'm gonna hang up now and continue listening to the show.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it so much. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, Tom Benson, but I kind of agree with them. I don't understand why she wasn't held in contempt of court. I don't understand why she was there. I don't understand how she could just be railing on her mouth, running her mouth in that situation.
Well, maybe the court just bent it over backwards to accommodate her comments,
sure they did.
You know?
I'm sure they did.
I see where the Orange County Democrats have expressed their full support for her.
Really?
Yeah, is that a surprise? And they're also calling for the firing of a clerk in Seminole County who wrote something about something nasty about the DA. The County Democratic Executive Committee unanimously passed a resolution at its meeting last night supporting Ayala. What's her name?
Ayala.
Who was removed from the Markeith Lloyd case by Governor Scott. They're calling it a political move on the governor's part. And, the two can play that game. I mean,
oh, dear God.
The county Democrats probably want Soros's money in the future, so they got to support his man,
If anyone is being political here, it's her. Oh, chill. They just like what she's doing. They don't care about the law. It's like what they do with these judges and who they want on the Supreme Court. And what they're doing to Trump's travel ban. They don't care about what the actual law says as long as they pass their agenda, which actually I'm going to get to that in the next segment because we have to go over things that were said at the Neil Gorsuch hearing that reveals a lot of what Democrats, how they think about, well, the Constitution and how they're wrong. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
All right, so let's take one more call real quick, and then I have to get into the Neil Gorsuch Senate confirmation hearing because he was nominated to the Supreme Court. Some really interesting stuff coming off of that. But we were talking about Aramis Ayala and her whole thing to not go after the death penalty. And I have a call here from Willie in Orlando. Willie, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, hey, I'll try to be real quick. I know you're pressed for time. I saw the writing on the wall when this State Attorney Ayala gave her acceptance speech back in November. And she was pretty adamant then how she didn't like the disproportionate amount of minorities that were in prison and jail, and I knew what that meant. But my question about yesterday, Brad King should have just raised an objection every time she tried to open her mouth. He should have objected, objection, never let her talk. How she even got to speak is beyond me. And one more thing, let me tell you.
I'm glad you were surprised because I was shocked when I heard that. I didn't understand it. Like, what is she doing there?
Yeah. And another thing, real quick, just my personal experience about when that moron, that animal killed the cop. That morning, I live down here in Lockhart, Rosemont area, and that morning, shortly after it happened, there was two cops right in front of our house with assault rifles. They were on every corner, choppers in the air. They were looking at an apartment complex behind our house, looking for them. And we figured out what was going on, and it was later that day. We were driving to the store, and I told one cop, I said, don't let that SOB make it to central booking. And he just nodded at me. And from what she's done, they did an outstanding job of making sure he made it to central booking. And what she's done, I'll guarantee they'll think twice before they do that again.
I understand what you're saying, Willie. I'm not going to encourage the police to not.
Oh, I know that. I know. But, I'm not trying to encourage them either. But
and
still,
I really don't like.
Don't let them make it to central booking.
I understand, but I understand what you're saying because the police are going to be very upset about this. So when they're out there, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I was just saying.
I sat out in the backyard all day, locked and loaded with two pit bulls, hoping he'd jump over that fence and I'd get that reward money. I knew there'd be a reward out. But anyway.
Oh,
go ahead, I apologize.
All right, thank you for your call. I was going to say, I don't want to encourage, police to kill people, but I understand that the police will be frustrated because, they feel like the state attorney's not on their side. But I will say this as well. I really don't like what the Orlando police did when they caught him. I mean, you look at the video, they were beating them up. I mean, they were beating the crap out of him. You can't be doing that. And the biggest reason you can't be doing that is because it could hurt the case. And I don't want anything to hurt this case. That's why I'm upset at her, because I want him to get the death penalty. So that was my take on that. All right, speaking of the law, we have to go into the Supreme Court hearing of Neil Gorsuch. Now, there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out of that, and they're focusing on, of course, I hate these confirmation hearings. I know I've told you that before. I hate them because it's just a bunch of senators grandstanding. They're either grandstanding or they're trying to get you in a gotcha situation. You know what I mean? So all day they're either making speeches or they're like, would you vote against Roe v. Wade? Would you vote against, as a Supreme Court justice, against this specific case? And of course he's like, well, I can't, I'm not going to say that right now. I have to look at the case as they come. That's what you do as a Supreme Court. But, they try to trap him, and it's just disgusting. It's just ridiculous. But I wanted to play a comment here from Dianne Feinstein. I know, the liberal senator out there who made what she said here. She was talking about Gorsuch and all this stuff. What she said here is so revealing. And it's something that a lot of you know about when it comes with the left. But it's still so revealing. And when you actually think about it, it's so beyond reason. Why the left tries, I know why, but that they try to make this approach to the Constitution, and it's nonsensical, and I hate it. And, this is, go ahead and play that cut for me, Tom Benson. This is what Dianne Feinstein said.
Judge Gorsuch has also stated that he believes judges should look to the original public meaning of the Constitution when they decide what a provision of the Constitution means. This is personal, but I find this originalist judicial philosophy to be really troubling. In essence, it means that judges and courts should evaluate our constitutional rights and privileges as they were understood in 1789. However, to do so would not only ignore the intent of the framers, that the Constitution would be a framework on which to build, but it severely limits the genius of what our Constitution upholds. I firmly believe the American Constitution is a living document intended to evolve as our country evolves.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
I love watching your reaction in there, Tom. They can't see it on Facebook Live, but your reaction always cracks me up.
If she wants it to evolve, go through the motions of getting an amendment made.
Exactly.
Gee whiz.
So this whole, just think how dumb this whole, and the left says this all the time. Think how dumb it is to say that a document is living and breathing. No. No. The whole reason you write a document is so it doesn't change. You write something down so it's permanent. That's why you do it. That's why you put it in a document. Think about this fact, okay? Think about if you're hired, you're hired at a radio station, okay? And you're hired under contract. And the contract has certain things in it, and part of it is what you will get paid that year. Okay? And there's there's nothing in it that says they can change it. This says, this is the contract, this is what you get paid. Could you imagine if your boss came in later that year and paid you less? And you say, there's nothing in the contract that gives you the ability to do this. And they say, well, it's a living and breathing document. See, we have to evolve, and the contract must evolve, and things have changed this year, and so we're evolving. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. Imagine if we took that approach. Because the Constitution's a contract. That's what it is. It's a contract signed by people, ratified by the states, a contract of government of the enumerated powers of the federal government. So when they wrote it, anytime you read something that was written, you're supposed to interpret it as it was written. You don't just change the interpretation. When you talk to an author and they write like a history, you don't just interpret and change the history. No, you read what it says and you interpret it based on what it was meant to say. This whole living and breathing document is the dumbest thing ever. Now, because, just imagine if our whole country was run that way. If every contract in this country, contract for buying a house, a contract for making a loan on a car, a contract between an employer, and any kind of contract. Imagine if we took the approach that it's living and breathing and it evolves. Society would crumble. It would absolutely crumble. Yet we've taken that approach to maybe the most important contract in our country, and that is the Constitution of the United States. Tell me how that makes sense. It's so dumb. By the way, I just got a comment that says, I wonder if they apply this to the Bible, too. They do apply it to the Bible.
Sure they do.
They absolutely apply it to the Bible, which is a whole nother issue and a whole another problem.
Feinstein, without intending to do this, actually makes a good point. You say something often enough, and there's people out there who are going to believe you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's very true. And this is spread in our schools, and it's spread in everything else. And somebody said, Michael, you're being much too simplistic. Okay, let me get deeper then, because I'm being too simplistic, even though this is a very simple solution. Feinstein is right on one thing, okay? The Constitution was meant to be a framework for our country. Now, think about when you build a house. You can build on top of the house, and you can change how the house is being built over time, and you can change things. But what you keep sturdy, what you keep the same, is the foundation. The Constitution is the foundation for our country. It is meant to be strict laws, enumerated powers as a strong foundation for our country, and it's supposed to be limited. So you have that strong foundation that has specific enumerated powers based on what was meant when they wrote it. Specific enumerated powers, a strong foundation for the country, and limited in power, so anything that was not in the Constitution, then you could build upon that foundation and change things over time. Now, when you look at contracts, if you want something to change in a contract, what do? Well, Tom Benson mentioned this earlier. You go through a process of amendment. This happens in contracts as well, where you have amendment and you amend the contract. The founders understood that things would evolve and change over time, and some things would have to change. So what they did is they put in place an amendment process to maybe amend things. But they also understood that there are fundamental, timeless truths and principles. Fundamental, timeless truth and principles that must be put forward for society to continue on. Now, someone says it's a blueprint for how to govern. Yes, based on specific and enumerated powers. What Feinstein wants to do is go beyond those specific and enumerated powers. She wants us not only to go beyond those enumerated powers, but to reinterpret what the enumerated powers and what the actual document is saying. Does this make any sense to you? I think it does. Now, the person who has a response to this, a great response to this really, was also in the hearing, Senator Ben Sasse. This isn't a direct response, but he actually talked about the role of government, the role of the judge, the role of the legislature, and I think he actually makes a very good point. This is what he said.
Empathy is actually not the role of a Supreme Court justice. It is, in a sense, our role, for we are men and women who've been hired and can be fired by the American people to empathize. We're to identify with the hopes and the struggles of 320 million Americans. But the judge, instead, has a different job, to faithfully and dispassionately apply the law to the facts of the particular case. The judge's robe is there to remind the judge and us of that if the facts are on your side, it shouldn't matter which judge you sit before. Our ideal is one where you can trade out one judge for another judge, and you should get the same outcome. This is the heart of what we mean when we say that we believe in the rule of law, not of men or of women or of black or white or rich or poor. We are not to be ruled by a judge's passions or by a judge's empathy or by a judge's policy preferences.
I think that was well said. What he was talking about there, and this is the whole foundation of our country, the whole founding principle of our country, is that we are ruled by the rule of law. Okay? Now, yes, we have elected officials. We the people put them in place. But the whole point is that no one, not judges, not congressmen, not anyone, not rich, not poor, not black or white, no one is above the rule of law. But what happens is these judges go in and they believe they're above the rule of law, for instance, but they also want to change what the law actually means and says. And that is not the role of a judge. You make judgments based on the law. And this is another problem we have when it comes to the whole Trump immigration ban. There's nothing in the law that bans Muslims. But we make broad interpretations based on some rhetoric in the campaign, and we say, well, intent matters. Well, not here, no, because it's not in the law. So you either have to interpret the law or not. That's just my take. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. We have something that made Yaffee laughy, and so much more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your voice of reason, your voice of truth in a world that is beyond reason. I've been on since 8 p.m. If you missed any of the show, make sure to check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. You can download the Beyond Reason Radio app, and they're always on there as well. You should listen to all of every show. No excuses, because we address a lot of good things, and you have to listen to the whole show. But I figured I'd end the show with two things. First, I'm going to end the show with what made Yaffee happy. And then later I'll end the show with what made Yaffee laughy. But first we're going to go, and I wonder if this would make you happy as well, Tom Benson, with something that makes I can't even say it, Yaffee happy. The Universal Orlando Resort has a new ride. It's Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon. Now the ride, they're replacing waiting in line with lounging on couches and listening to a racy barbershop quartet sing until it's time to enter the ride. This is a new concept they want to do, where instead of having you wait in line forever, they actually have, things to keep you entertained.
Mm-hmm.
I love this idea because by far, especially when you go to like Universal or Disney, by far the most annoying thing is waiting in line.
Sure.
That's why, usually I would take a day off during the week and go during the week or something because the lines aren't as long. You don't want to go on the weekends or holidays because it's just ridiculous. And they really need to do this for Halloween Horror Nights. Because I used to go to Halloween Horror Nights every year, and by far the lines are the worst in Halloween Horror Nights, worse than anywhere else. And you're spending half the time waiting in line. And it's crazy, and it makes you not want to go, especially in Florida when it's hot and everything. And you just don't want to go anymore. Like I cringe going to like Halloween Horror Nights anymore because it's just waiting in line is just unbearable. So if they can figure out a way to keep doing this, and they said they want to imply this to much more things. Apparently, what they were doing is they were, making the lines more interesting. Like you go to the Spider-Man ride or Harry Potter, and there's a lot of interesting things to look at while you're standing in line, but you're still standing in line.
Yeah.
So they want to make it a way to kind of go around that. So I just wanted to say that makes me happy. Now it's time for things that make Yaffee laughy. Yes, things that made Yaffee laughy. So Tim Allen was on Jimmy Kimmel this week, and I have to say, you want a show that really makes me laugh is his show Last Man Standing. I love that show. It is the most underrated sitcom out right now. It is one of the funniest, if not the funniest sitcom out right now. It is fantastic, and it's not, I like it because he's a conservative and he's actually a man. There's so many shows out where it's just bashing men constantly, but he's actually a man and he's actually smart and does a lot of good things. But it's also just a really funny show. There's a lot of good. They used to really address some, political and main topics that are controversial topics. they've gone away from that a little bit. They might have been losing viewers because of it, because it got too political. But it's still a really great show. And Tim Allen is great in it. It's just really, really funny show. So he was on Jimmy Kimmel this week, and he was talking about the show and some other things. And there was a little exchange he had about Hollywood, and this is what he said.
You went to the presidential inauguration, right?
I was invited by, we did a VIP thing for the vets and went to the Veterans Ball. And so I went to go see Democrats and Republicans. Yeah, I went to the inauguration.
I'm not attacking you.
You get in this town. I'm not kidding. You got to be real careful around here. You get beat up. If you don't believe what everybody believes, this is like 30s Germany. I don't know what happened. If you're not part of the group, you know what we believe is right. I go, well, I might have a problem with that. I'm a comedian. I like going on both sides.
I love that. I mean, you're laughing, though, because there's an element of truth. And everyone in there laughing because they know. Because Hollywood has gotten so crazy. He's like, you don't know. You have to defend yourself. You go in this town and you say anything conservative and people hate you and you're blacklisted. And it shows, for one, Tim Allen's a great example of how ridiculous that approach is by Hollywood, because there's a lot of conservatives that they could reach and make a lot of money off of that they're totally just throwing by the wayside. There's a whole audience they're not reaching because they're too busy bashing our beliefs. And Hollywood's kind of wised up on this a little bit because, you just look at Mel Gibson films, but, a lot of good Christian films are out and becoming very popular. But his show's pretty successful, Last Man Standing. And it's a great example that something like that can be successful. Something like that can be good.
So are you saying Hollywood would cave on their beliefs to make money? Is that what you're saying?
I hope so. That's what I want to see.
All right.
Maybe. Because, you watch, like, the Oscars. And, the ratings are awful for the Oscars. And most of it's because it's just bashing our way of life, bashing our beliefs. The whole Oscars and Emmys is the same thing. It's just like, what, you're a conservative who wants to secure the border, who maybe thinks it's not a good idea to bring in thousands of refugees when the terrorist group ISIS says they're going to use the refugee flow to infiltrate your country? What, are you a racist? You're a bigot? What, are you voted for Trump? How could you vote for Trump? You're an idiot. So if I'm a conservative who voted for Trump like I am, and I'm not going to watch that. I'm not going to put up with that. I don't care. And then I played a couple weeks ago that bit from Jerry Seinfeld where he's like, why do we care what actors think anyways? They literally just read. They just pretend. Why do we care what they actually think? Just get up there and pretend. I thought that was great. But it's just sad. Because that there are actors, and actors have talked about this, how they're just totally blacklisted from Hollywood because of their political beliefs. You notice when, certain actors come out as conservative, they're totally just thrown out. And it happened to Tim Allen. It happened to Kelsey Grammer. It's happened to others. So I thought that was good, but it also made me laugh. All right, it has been quite a show. And if you missed any of the show, you have to catch out the podcast. It's your assignment, your homework. You must do it, and I expect there will be a pop quiz next time. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, joined by Tom Benson, who I thank for producing tonight. I will be back Friday at 6 p.m., but till then, check out the podcast, and make sure to send me a friend request on Facebook, by the way, and I will accept it, or follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. I hope you guys have a good week, and I will catch you next time.